All right. So, guys, everybody who is here, it's so glad to have you. Anthony here is a founder of agency called Fletch PMM. You might have seen him on LinkedIn. And we're here to discuss a kind of an important topic. Messaging when you're talking to more than one audience. Maybe you have more than one ICP. Maybe you have more than one product. And we're going to discuss all these different cases and see what should we do and what's the most effective way. Obviously, there are no one best way type of things, no magic formulas. But what we'll give you is sort of like solid starting points, let's say. Because what is a best practice? The best practice is it is a starting point, and then you do your own optimization and experimentation from there. So, and we're going to make it very, very interactive, and we're going to take a shit ton of audience questions, hopefully even mostly audience questions. Okay, let's see. People are complaining about can't go full screen. And what are they saying here? Sharon says, double click on the video to go full screen on desktop. Try that. Sharon will send some money your way. Taz also put a link there in the chat.
What's up, Taz? How you doing? Taz and my bud.
So this is a new webinar platform for me. This is SQL. We did one event with it before and it was a shit show. Hopefully this is better. All right. So, Anthony, I have prepared very specific questions, but just very broadly speaking, without knowing any specific case, if you have multiple target customers that you're trying to market to, how should you approach your homepage structure? What's your generic advice here?
Yeah, so I tend to see that there's sort of three approaches, and they have pluses and minuses depending what you're doing. And I have this little catchy phrase to remember these. First one, you can basically summarize. I want to say, how do I help broadly across all these different segments? And the problem with summarizing is it will likely result in something very broad, unless your segments are highly connected, right? Where they're all kind of in the same workflows, same use cases, then it won't be so broad. But like if you're a giant company that services enterprise companies in this industry and agencies over here and consultants, like some very broad thing, or for all these different use cases, you're going to end up with something like transforming business operations or some vague thing that can cover kind of all the pieces. So the summarized approach is the first approach. And I would say it's probably the worst or weakest, at least from a messaging positioning standpoint. Middle option is not summarize, but itemize. And itemize is where you basically turn the homepage into a homepage of homepage doors, or like a channel changer, we've called it before, where effectively you're saying, I'm just using the homepage as a directory and it will take people to the page that they want. So you could use rippling as a great example. Their hero says something like supporting IT, HR, and finance teams. And then it says explore rippling by product, and it just lists all the products grouped by the different persona or department that they're going after. So it's like, here's all our products for HR teams, here's all our products for finance teams. And at this point, you're just itemizing, listing them all out and letting people self-serve their way to the one that is most relevant to them. This can work if people are just as likely to be coming for any of these reasons. So you can imagine behind the scenes, you might be able to intuit that rippling is actually evenly spreading their go-to-market budget across all these different groups. And so they're like, it's 33, 33, 33, who's coming? And so rather than having a priority, we're actually going after all three in equal priority or equal measure. So itemize works well if your go-to-market budget really is truly split evenly across these groups. Third way is not summarize or itemize, it's prioritize. And it's to say, is there actually an ideal customer profile? And not 10 ideal customer profiles. One, is there really a group of people that we want to reach more than the others? And is our go-to-market budget being allocated to that group proportionally to show that they actually are the equal, like the most important? So, we service large companies, little SMBs, and, consultancies, but 80% of our money is going to the enterprise customers. In that case, you probably want to arrange the homepage to match the go-to-market budget. So you would say the first chunk of the page, because 80% of all of our money is going there and the likelihood that they're going to land on is going to be much higher because of that, let's prioritize and speak to them first. And so consumer companies, sometimes this looks like just elevating a specific product itself. So Apple, when you go on Apple's website and they just launched the new watch and they're really pushing the new watch, the segment of people they care about is people shopping for the watches. When they elevate to that hero, they're doing an amount of prioritization. The Apple homepage is not summarizing all the different things they can do for everyone with some sort of, we transform personal, computing experiences. It's not itemizing. It's not like, hey, explore Apple by product. Usually they're prioritizing one thing. And you'll see this too with like even Microsoft. The last time I checked, I think when you go on, I don't know what it is now, but like a couple months ago, it was Copilot that they were really pushing, even though they have Xbox and all these different things. Some big companies like Workday had launched a new recruiting tool and they're like, we really want to go after them. That's who we're going to prioritize for this section. So thinking about the homepage as kind of like the mirror for where your go-to-market budget is going to be spent can sort of help you figure out which bucket you're in. And I think the summarize ones where it can work with summarize is if the company doesn't really do marketing, right? Like if you're Palantir and all your contracts are $100 million with like different governments of the world, I don't think people are making those deals by booking a demo on the homepage. Those are, on the golf course and stuff. So it's probably less important for someone like that to make it like one of those decisions. So that's my long answer.
That's a long answer. Three good ways. And a lot of it, I feel, depends on like how well known you are. So for instance, like let's take HubSpot. Like most everyone knows what HubSpot is. And like if we type in HubSpot.com, it's a summarize type of approach here. Like there's like, and it's kind of very vague shit that they say about seamlessly connect your data and like, but like yeah, it's a CRM, even though they don't even call themselves anymore CRM now. It's a customer platform, but then as you keep scrolling, they start itemizing. So they summarize and you keep scrolling, they itemize. And I think HubSpot can get away with it because you already know what HubSpot is, right? But if you're a small ass startup and nobody knows who you are, which is most startups, like if you're under 10 million in revenue, most of the market has no clue who you are. And then if you have a vague ass summarization, I don't think it's going to work. And I mean, unless there is a really compelling way to summarize, it could be possible, I feel. It could be possible to summarize in a concise and clear manner. Do you have any examples that come to mind that somebody who does summarization well?
That's a good question. I mean, we look at so many and so many of the summarized ones are bad. So I feel like those are most of my examples are all ones that I was like, this is terrible. I think I'd have to think and look. Like I agree. I think I agree with you. Like there definitely is probably a way to do it, but I'm not sure. Because to do it well, like, would have to be probably a company with less brand recognition that could summarize in such a way that even if I don't have the context, it would still help me kind of get it. And I don't know. I don't know.
This is kind of a summarize slash prioritize hybrid approach is what I'm using at Wynter.com. If you go to the homepage, I try to summarize what it is. Basically, I call it now B2B market research, on-demand market research for B2B, which is kind of a summarization of what it is. Yep. And then I immediately list out my 3 top use cases.
Yep.
And then as you scroll down the page, I'll talk more about these use cases. How do I know? So this is a question. So you have a website, you have multiple ICPs and multiple products. How do you know if what you're doing now is working or not working? What would be your test?
I'll use us as an example. When we had really wishy-washy, untargeted positioning when we started, and this was a reflection of our business strategy. When we were just starting out as a consultancy, me and my business partner, Rob, we didn't really know exactly what we were selling yet. We had some ideas, and we basically used very vague language. So I think our headline at the beginning was, we help founders market hard to market products. So that phrase is a summary of a sense. And what would happen when people would get on sales calls, we would have to do a ton of the education and explanation on the sales call. And they would be like, can you help me with X? And we're like, no, we don't really do that. And they're like, oh, okay. And so they would come onto the calls to figure out what we do because our messaging and positioning was very weak and confusing. Fast forward, it's much more targeted now, and we basically lay it all out. The positioning, then the conversation has shifted on sales calls to basically they already understand it all, and they might have some final questions and objections of like, well, would you work? We're maybe a little outside of your ICP. Would you work with us? Or we have this interesting, unique thing about our business. Would that disqualify us from working with you? And so the conversation becomes more talking through the last pieces that would keep them from buying versus starting from scratch. This is what we do and why we do it and for whom and all that stuff. And so to me, I think when you get the messaging right, the first place you'll see it is on the sales calls where the people who come through, they should be way highly more qualified, the better fit for what you're actually looking for than before, where you might be taking calls with all sorts of different people for all sorts of different reasons.
That's excellent. I would add here that the plain good old message testing also still works for this because fundamentally they need to understand what is this product. If by summarization you make it so vague that they don't understand it anymore, I mean, that's a sign. And people rate it on Likert scale, so you get a 5 is maximum. So it's like, oh, it's a 3.3. Well, clearly it's like very mediocre score. And then you get also qualitative feedback. What is it that they don't understand? They will spell it out for you. Same thing about relevancy. Like relevancy would need to answer, who is this for? Is it for me?
Yeah.
And if they don't, if I'm your ideal customer and I don't find myself in the messaging, I'm like, I'm not sure who this is for. Well, clearly, it needs to improve. And let's say it is a sales lead, so the closing happens in the sales call. Well, it still needs to be compelling enough so they would want to schedule.
Yeah.
Like even superficially. Or the first option you said is, was it the first option where the self-segmentation, like, if you're CIO, click here, CTO, click here, and etc. Right? They need to be intrigued enough to click one of those buttons, right? So
you have some data on that, don't you? Like when people will add an immediate call to self-selected group, doesn't it usually perform pretty poorly? Like when you land on the hero and it's like, are you this group or this group or this group? And someone has no context. I feel like from what I've seen, people don't like to be like, they're like, I don't even know what you are yet. I just want to, let me view the content. But what have you seen from a data perspective?
I mean, actually, I don't have aggregate data on that particular thing, so I don't know. But it's very similar to getting like one of those insurance quotes online. Like it immediately asks you all these things where you say, holy shit, they're gonna sell me on all kinds of stuff that I don't. Like all the SDRs on standby. They're gonna call me. So let's take a couple of questions here, and then we can keep on riffing. So Andrea is from Maxio. So those interested, Maxio.com. So Maxio has 2 ICPs, startup founders, and then finance types, CFOs and, VP finance type of people. So, and Andrea in her comment here says, prioritize feels like the obvious answer. But what do you do when there's disagreement internally about who the right ICP is, meaning who should be number 1? Context. Board wants to go down market, which requires us to target a different persona. But when I look at who the majority of current users or buyers are, it's a totally different persona. So, Anthony, do you have a take?
Yeah, and it sounds like I'm hearing 2 different things. I'm hearing one of what's the best way to make this decision? And I'm hearing a second question of how can you help, or what should I do to convince the board to make the decision that I think is the right decision. And I think both of those questions are very hard to answer, right? The second question is probably harder than the first one. The first question is truly a business strategy question, right? Where are we going to play? How do we think we're going to win, right? Like Pep, your whole podcast has been viewing all those types of strategy decisions. that to me almost predate anything messaging, positioning, website. Like, do we want to target down market companies or not? Right? Do we want to go after enterprises? Like those are very important strategic questions. And so I think it's looking at those different elements, right? Because it's if it was a math equation, then startups would be the safest bet on the planet, because you could just do the math equation and you could be like, oh, it's spit out. This is exactly who we should go after and why. And that's just kind of the hard part about strategy is it's all decisions, and there's thousands of factors that go into them. And so a lot of it, internal team alignment of trying to figure out who you want to go after based on your industry and segment. That any like broad statements of like, here's how you always choose. It's tricky because it's so different depending on, do you choose it based on what market is the most hungry for it? Do you choose it based on who you could reach the best, just distribution wise? Like maybe this market's great, but none of your distribution would be able to get you there. Do you do it based on what product you've built? It's going to be a combination of all these different aspects. Mm-hmm. Unless, Pep, you have the answer and you're like, I have solved innovation.
The answer is, it's very difficult to, impossible to say who you should go after, right? Because it's a very strategic decision. So many things to know, which we don't know. We don't have this information. However, if it were me, and based on the extremely limited, almost zero information that I have available to me, I would still optimize for the money I have today. So meaning like maybe it's the finance persona, if I read it correctly. I would still keep it there just to avoid risk, because going after the down market new persona, the startup founder, it's a risky bet. We don't know if it's going to work out. And so that would not stop us from marketing to that audience, but we just direct them to somewhere else. Like if it's a direct response ad campaign, dedicated landing page. But also if I go to maxia.com today, above the fold, do I see anywhere that says, hey, startup founder, go here?
Yeah.
There's a developer's menu item, there's no CTA under solutions. There's not even a startup founder under solutions. So actually, I mean, the basics are missing. So I think that could be a immediate lift right there.
Yeah.
Okay, Anthony, this scenario. So still keeping the same ICP, but adding a different product that solves different use cases, solves different problems. How do we explain? Does anything change in terms of this itemize, prioritize, summarize idea?
I think it's the same kind of concept, right? Like, I think a lot of times people will add new products that they want to sell to their customers, but a certain product always kind of serves as the entry point for most people. So a great example of this is Stripe. Stripe has, I think, 20 or like 18 or 20 different products, but the payments processing is usually what everyone starts with. So when you go on their homepage, they say suite of financial products, some sort of, high level positioning of who we are. And then there's a big section on the payments. And then they gradually reveal the other products, which maybe are of secondary importance. So there's an argument to be made that if most people come for the first wedge product, you should lead your messaging with the wedge product. Especially if it's like, well, they can't even buy the second one until they bought the first one, right? Like there's no reason to then expend energy on stuff that they won't even be able to use for, 6 months to a year, because they actually have to come in through this other piece. But sometimes, right, there aren't. There actually are complementary products for very related things, right? Like and Pep, I can't remember if you actually break them out as different products, but like I see those different use cases of Wynter that they could live on the same level of like you could run a Wynter test on this specific thing, you could run it on this specific thing, and whether or not you actually call those different products or not, like the person coming likely is actually looking for multiple of those. I'm like, I actually do need to do that, and I do need to do that, and so keeping them on the same level of importance actually makes sense, because they're like, well, this is great, I can actually use this for all these specific reasons that I am trying to do over the next quarter or something like that.
Yeah. Even if you go to salesforce.com right now, at least the version that I'm seeing shows the starter suite. Like just do this one, which is the foot in the door. Let's get you in, and then we'll upsell you all the things later, right?
And I tend to take the opinion that if you are doing a PLG motion, more than just we offer a free trial. Like it's a part of the business that because PLG requires tons and tons of users, right? Even if it's bottoms up, like say your Notion. You're like, our strategy to get in the enterprise is to do PLG bottoms up and then layer on product-led sales where we come in and, all that stuff. Anytime that you need to get tons and tons of users, I kind of think the decision is made for you on the homepage where it's like, you probably want to make the homepage for your PLG motion. If you want the PLG motion to work and it requires someone to go to the homepage. There's obviously like very intense PLG motions like Venmo, where you never even see a Venmo website to get the product, right? It's an app on the App Store. But if we're talking B2B and you are going to land on a website and that's a key part of the PLG flow, that's why the bulk of these companies will speak pretty much to the end user, and then they'll keep that tab up at the top. Enterprise, click here if you're enterprise. So they'll have a big, like Loom does it that way. Notion was doing it that way for a while. Some of these companies have moved away. I think they've gone more sales led than PLG. Like they were PLG in their early days. They've gotten much more mature. Now they're kind of pivoting the bulk of their strategy to sales led. So the homepage has shifted. But when you look at those companies in the early days when it was PLG, even if they were serving enterprise, they still are writing everything kind of from the end user perspective.
Mm-hmm. Folks, soon we're going to do a lot of Q&A. So if you have a question, please use the questions tab. It's different from chat. I see some of your questions in chat, but like they might get lost in the how to use SQL conversation. Not a good sign though, if most of the chat is like, how do I use this damn thing? Anyways, so yeah, post your questions in the questions tab. I see Sander has already posted a question there, and we'll get to all of those. I have also a specific question. So the topic of what are the most horrible ways, not even your top 3 ways, but the absolute garbage ways to do multi-ICP, multi-product messaging. And I'll start. I think the worst option is the rotating banner. 3 seconds is one thing, boom, then it's another thing, then it's another thing. Like that is by far the worst. What's your?
I would say either that or the incredibly vague, my favorite Airtable example, connect anything, or I always forget, connect everything, achieve anything. These like change the world messages. And I'm like, bro, it's a spreadsheet. Like it's a cool spreadsheet. We use it every day. Our business runs on Airtable. I would never use this insanely grandiose messaging. So like, I think, and I know they said the absolute worst. I think the rotating value prop one is horrible too, because it's who is going to sit and watch all 25 of your rotating thing? Nobody. So that's one problem. The super vague one is another problem. And then I think like these ones where it's so clearly disconnected from the product. My favorite was PandaDoc. So they're a contract software. And I think it literally used to say some version of increase revenue with PandaDoc. And I actually did a post about it and I tagged them. And some of their people weighed in, but I basically said, I was like, I've sent hundreds of PandaDoc contracts. I've never once in my brain connected it to, I just love how PandaDoc increases our revenue. Like it's just so far away from what the product does. And I've seen this on payroll software, increase your revenue with payrolls. I'm like, I'm using the software to give away my money. Like I would never be like, oh, what a revenue driver. So those are my personal ones I hate the most.
Absolutely. There's another one that in theory sounds great, but in practice is mostly horrible, and which is personalization. So the idea is that a visitor comes and we are accurately able to detect who this person is and what they want, and then just show this single offer that is most compelling to this visitor. Now, in theory, that sounds amazing. In practice, it hardly ever works. And I was in experimentation world, conversion optimization world for like 10 plus years, doing a lot of personalization work. A classic example that I always talk about is this website called Iron Mountain, ironmountain.com. So they use very fancy personalization software, very expensive software. Basically, based on your IP address, they would be able to tell if you're a small business, if you're government, if you're military, if you're enterprise, and a bunch of other stuff. And I think like Clearbit things also, they could detect your product category, like are you SaaS or are you IT services, whatever. Now, and for each of these segments, there was a personalized version. And not the whole website was personalized, just like the key messaging. And then we A/B tested the generic message, what is Iron Mountain, against each personalized segment. and the generic message won every single time.
That's wild.
And two key reasons why. Well, just because you are able to personalize doesn't mean the personalized message is better, right? Because you're able to write a different message, but is that message really personalized? Did they do a lot of qualitative research to know what is the specific pain point of that, personalized segment? They probably did not. So that's the one thing. And second thing is that did the personalization tech actually work? Like, were the right people shown the right variation? Probably not, right? And this is a few years ago. Personalization tech has improved since those days. But a lot of people try to sell you that this is the panacea, like personalization is the way. And in theory, yes. In practice, I don't think so.
And I think of the April Dunford example she uses, where she talks about when Bic pens, they made a Bic pen for women, and then all the comments were like, I've been struggling with these male pens for so long, like, so glad that I have a pen for me that's not one of these bad masculine ones with ink. And so it's like, to your point, I don't think just saying, hey, are you living in, I live in Libertyville, Illinois. Are you living in, like, because you'll get those ads on, like, Facebook.
Totally.
Hey, are you a man?
Singles in Libertyville.
Yeah, exactly. Are you 30 plus in Libertyville? And just because I see something that is me does not make me automatically like, wow, what a relevant thing that I must click. It still depends on what's the message actually saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about actually personalizing the message, let's say from one ICP to the next. Now, if you're targeting different ICPs for the same product, you actually don't need to use completely different messaging for each group. You need to cater to the differences that matter. And a lot of them, different groups, might care about the very same things. And so you need ICP research, target customer research, to know what are the few differences that make a difference. This is what Wynter surveys are for, obviously. But in a lot of cases, even if I'm selling Wynter to product managers versus marketing managers, they care about the same things.
Yeah, the shared use case is so important, right? It's like it's the old jobs to be done theory, right? That if you could have multiple people, like the example from Jobs, that it's like you could have a segment of people, a grandma living in Denver and a 25-year-old living in Miami could be in the same segment if they both are trying to make their home internet faster, right? Like, that's the exact same use case, and you could sell to them in the same way. You wouldn't have to be like, here's routers for grandmas and here's for young 25-year-olds.
All right, so we got 30 minutes left, so now let's take just audience questions. By the way, if you have a website with multiple ICPs and you want us to look at it right now, put in your website in the questions tab and say who are the ICPs that matter, and we'll see if we can get to it. But let's start with this most upvoted question by Sander. And Sander is asking, if you have multiple products, how do you avoid the all-in-one solution that is quite vague?
So I go back to this all-in-one idea, and this comes back to a strategy. This is a strategy question. There is a legitimate reason to be all-in-one, and it is, I think Rippling is the key example. They've taken a bunch of point solutions that are highly understood by the customers. They picked a segment that was using these point solutions. I think they were mainly focused SMB at the beginning. And it was these SMBs using these different point solutions for payroll and IT. And so when you onboarded an employee, you would have to set them up on so many different accounts. And then you would lose this connectivity of like what they're actually doing and the customer data or the employee data and all that stuff. So what they said was you could theoretically just rebuild these point solutions that are highly understood, like a payroll app. We all kind of know what to expect. Password, like provisioning, technology app like that the IT team is going to use to give you your MacBook and stuff. Like there's these highly understood categories, and they're like, what if we recreated them and we brought them together for a segment that really is shopping for all of them? That you're like, I'm a SMB company, I need to get these things, and I'm so annoyed that I'm having to string these tools together, so it makes sense to get this all-in-one tool. I think the all-in-one breaks when a company is doing things that would fall in different product categories that are not that well known and are not often bought together. And so when you're saying it's an all-in-one tool that does X thing that's kind of niche over here and Y thing that's a little different, all you've actually done is made it really, really confusing for people to get what you do, because they're like, what do you, and you see this a lot with like early stage startups that have maybe raised like their Series A, like, well, we got to this level of the Series A, and now Series A, we really need to expand. Let's become an all-in-one platform. And so they start bundling different pieces. And like the jury's still out, and like, Chili Piper just launched their all-in-one positioning. The jury's out. Is that going to work or not work? Are these tools well known enough and in the same family of solutions that you would be shopping for together that would have this connectivity issue that you would actually want to buy them all at the same time and do a whole overhaul of your system? Again, jury's still out.
But absolutely, because they also introduced new language, demand conversion platform, which, like, what does that mean, right? Like, you need customer education.
Yep. And even Clue. So Clue, I think, uses all-in-one, and they actually have a funny pun. They say all-in-one with a W, like we won the deal. But maybe if you're saying we do all-in-one of everything competitive Intel related, that if you're a person shopping for stuff, competitive Intel solutions, you'd be like, oh yeah, I am looking for that. And another example too of where it actually works, Microsoft spends 30 years convincing the world that Excel and PowerPoint and Google and Sheets and documents, that these all belong in one. This is an all-in-one suite of tools. And so when Google launches, they actually also have to be an all-in-one to compete with them, because they basically launched and said, yeah, we're another all-in-one. Here's the reference point, and we have the same exact tools, but they're in the cloud. They're basically very low price, almost free, depending on your piece. So there are places where it works, but there's a lot of places where it doesn't work.
Yeah. So if you want to look at the example like Rippling, Anthony mentioned, great, like they're raking it in, like they're making so much money. It's like one of the fastest growing companies of all time, and they don't even use the language all-in-one, right? But there is a competitor of theirs in Europe, Factorial HR, which is like, yeah, basically it's like Rippling, but they're in Europe and South America, and they do use all-in-one in their messaging, but it's like all-in-one HR tool. And also, if you actually go to their website, their homepage, it's not vague HR. It's pretty clear what it is. So just saying all-in-one or being all-in-one doesn't mean that you have to be vague.
And Riverside is another one. So when people are saying, I'm going to start my first podcast, and we're in this world where most podcasts are just all digital on Zoom, and they're like, I want to upgrade from Zoom. I want to start a podcast. I know that I'm going to want to take clips from the podcast and turn them into social media. I know I'm going to have to get guests to come in. And then Riverside comes out and they're like, we're the all-in-one platform to handle that entire workflow. You can record your podcast with us. We'll clip it for you. And so it's all within the bounds of this conceptual workflow that people are very familiar with. They're like, oh, well, this is great. I was going to get some podcast tool, and then I knew I would have to get a content repurposing tool, and I knew but actually they are going to do all the things that I'm looking for in one place. And so that's another example where it can work. And I'll give one more is if you're a freelancer and you're making, I think it's like 50K or more a year, and you're a solopreneur or solo freelancer, no other contractors who work with you, no other employees, there's a company called Collective that will set up your S Corp status. They'll do your monthly accounting. And like my sister, who is a freelancer, she was like, I'm trying to just find something that will cover all these aspects of legality and compliance and my accounting and stuff. And like, I don't know where to go. And then she actually saw their message, and it was like, we're the all-in-one for the entrepreneur. And she got it, and she loves it because they're all conceptually related.
Yeah. All right. So we have a bunch of questions. Maybe let's pick up the pace per question. Chris Porter is asking, how do you approach multiple ICPs when the outcomes of what you offer for each ICP are different? So they want different things. There's a different outcome.
I tend, and I'll try to keep my answer shorter too. I tend to stick to the use cases themselves. So it's like, if you're really struggling with a use case, let's say it's like Calendly, right? You're booking meetings over the internet. If you talk about the problems of why it's hard to do that, and then say how you can solve that for them, the outcome of having better meetings could be very different for each customer. But if the activities are the same, the use case is the same, the message still will be very clear, and they'll be able to connect it to their own outcomes pretty easily.
And I think what you explained earlier, the prioritize or summarize or itemize could still apply. You could explain it separately, but just prioritize or whatever makes sense. Tom is asking a very generic question. Tom says, Tom Davenport, I would have you, Tom, rephrase this to be more specific, because this is what we've been ranting about anyway. So skipping this one. Cameron says, what do you do when you have multiple ICPs, but there is a primary one, but they're just one part of a buying committee? Well, my take here is that if the buying happens in a sales call, the homepage messaging doesn't matter. It's your only foot in the door. What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to take, I think April says this and other people too, but writing the homepage for the champion, who's going to be the one who's going to be most engaged to convince the other departments that this is something that we should get.
Winston is saying, could you prioritize based on channels? For example, founders more on LinkedIn, so 70% of the messaging is targeted to them, but marketing leaders are more active on Instagram, so 70% of messaging targeting to them. But both flows up to a positioning. So, I mean, messaging is, we're talking about home pages right here, predominantly. So I don't think channel, like you're looking at where the traffic comes from and then what do they want. I mean, I guess, is that a pitch for personalization? Maybe, but like you can't say that everybody who comes from LinkedIn cares about this.
I think it all depends to strategy, right? It's like, who's your most important? Are you investing way more money in Instagram than LinkedIn? And I would organize priority based on that, right?
Yeah, so I would not think about channels. I was like, who wants it, who gets it, who pays for it happily, who doesn't negotiate too much. Okay. Kristen is saying, oh, please hot take our homepage. Okay, Ubich or Ubic. Anthony, do you also see this URL in the chat?
I'm looking right now.
In the question mark tab.
Oh, I actually did not see the questions. Let me see over. Oh, Ubic, interesting.
Ubic.
You want to do a screen share?
Let's see. Start sharing my screen. All right. So let me share my screen for everybody, and then let's. Another user is sharing the screen. Is it you?
I don't think so.
Okay. Does it work? It works. Okay. AI-powered frontline employee experience platform. Let's see. What was the question? ICPs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 ICPs, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A lot of target verticals. Okay. So I guess like what is missing here is like we don't know what this really is. Communication and micro learning and task management. I think that this goes into what Anthony was referring to. If it's all in one, like payroll and like benefits gonna go together, but micro learning and copy and communication, that's like Slack and Docebo. I don't know.
And I think too, like employee experience, there's probably a lot of this hinges on, do the target ICPs know what an employee experience platform is? And if they don't, then this is probably not going to work because it's not telling them anything. Like if I say, the AI powered, I don't know, frontline CRM, like we have a point of reference, and then it's like, we're a CRM, but we have interesting other things that we've added, and it's some sort of all-in-one. Maybe that could work, but it'll all depend on, is employee experience a well-known product category, or is that something that Ubic has invented?
Yeah, so this is an approach of summarization here, and I think it's the trade-off here is that the clarity is suffering here, and also like the AI powered thing is like, is that how they make decisions? And of course now everybody's AI powered. And maybe a year ago it was just generically impressive. Designed for frontline teams. And next generation is not really a benefit, or modern, or those words. They don't mean anything. Like what's next gen for me is different for Anthony.
I love this too. Provides businesses with performance tools needed to succeed and thrive in today's economic landscape. Like
do more with less.
Very, very vague.
Yeah.
Aphorism.
So I mean, not to dunk on you here, but like I think you have tried to, by trying to talk to everybody, you have really watered down on the clarity and compellingness of the message. Because now it's like you want me to get a demo, but I am not. It's very hard to buy in, like, because you're not really solving my big pain point, because I'm not really sure what that is. And employee communication, again, there's got to be a unified line here on like how all these bits fit together. Yeah, and it's also extremely difficult to do any meaningful consulting by looking at your site for 2 minutes, right? Because we know very little. So sorry about that, Christian. But I can do a Do You Even Resonate episode with you if you want. Octave is Octave. Sorry to butcher your name. How would you approach the case? How would you approach the case where your different products have different brands' websites but share a similar ICP? Your different products have different websites. Well, then what is the problem?
Yeah. Like I would see like Basecamp, Jason Fried. He has 37 Signals as like the parent company, and then you have Basecamp, and they have a product called Campfire, and they're launching and stuff. So,
or like House of Brands versus a branded house, Procter and Gamble, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a single website for a single product, fantastic. No problem. Georgi is asking, does this resonate? Use Dojo.ai for social media managers and content creators. So is this multiple ICPs or not? Social media managers and content creators. Content creator is also one of those words where it's like, what is a content creator? Like, am I a content creator? I don't know. AI generated content that sounds like you. Okay. Immediately I see this as like, oh, I'm thinking Jasper, or one of those.
Creating a custom AI in your own style, create unlimited social media content in minutes. That's relatively clear. I feel like
it is clear. And I don't see a conflict in terms of like trying to be way two different things. And this is a social media thing. Okay. Well, I mean, if this is for multiple ICPs, I see no problem here.
Yeah, and positioning against ChatGPT, right? They had that section. I like that. Anytime you can actually bring in like what the alternatives would be and why
exactly
them, it's really helpful.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. Tim says, applitools.com, solutions by, and there's a bunch of one. Okay, let's have a look here. The all-in-one next generation AI-powered testing. Okay, testing what? QA testing, message testing, A/B testing.
What's that image look like? Can we see from that image? What does that look like?
It looks like it's browser testing to me.
Interesting.
So, like, how does your website look like in different browsers and screens, devices?
But are they using different words? Like in the left, they're saying "let nature into your living room," and then introducing our new sale on the right. Maybe they're doing like A/B testing.
Oh, well, there we go. Clarity problems. This all-in-one next generation AI-powered adds no value here, right? Yeah. Before you go into differentiators, focus on the clarity. And if I understand, oh, it's this thing. Now I might be thinking, well, how's it different from so-and-so?
Yep.
Then answer that part.
And anyone who says all-in-one, I feel like you should almost always just force yourself to make the subheading or the body text underneath. We combine a task manager with a blank and a blank. Like, just tell me what the all-in-one is, and then why I would want those all-in-one.
So it seems to be in terms of like solutions by use case answers, like what kind of testing, but I shouldn't have to hover on this menu item to figure out what kind of testing, right? Because testing is extremely broad. Okay. This kind of like hype things in general, just people, nobody believes that you revolutionize anything.
Also, I feel like a lot of the mainstream market who's shopping for tools is really not trying to revolutionize their company, and they're like very scared about making a buying purchase, and they don't want to buy the wrong thing, and using words like "we're going to completely transform your organization." You're like, oh, that's actually not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to solve this problem, and if I come in and try to change our whole organization, I might get fired.
Well, anyways, this bit here, this is like a summarized approach as my take. It's not bad. The all-in-one, again, adds very little value here, and also like what kind of quality? I guess it is software quality. It's some sort of a automated software testing here. So I mean, it makes sense for me, and because if it is a testing software, this is the main use case, right? Like this is the main value. It's not like who else was here? Developers and digital leadership. Like the CTL would not care about. I mean, maybe reduce number of developer hours spent on fixing bugs. That might be a strategic goal. But that would be in the sales call, not on the website. I would also venture here that probably the person who gets you into the demo is somebody is either an engineer or a QA person, not the CEO who cares about some sort of an value ROI thing, strategic metrics. Okay, let's take another one before we run out of time. Toggle says we have 2 ICPs, companies with 60 to 50 users, employees that provide knowledge-based services, sell time, not goods. So that's like you, Anthony. And 2 internal teams to provide knowledge-based services that need a system to accurately measure, allocate the usage of shared resources.
This is interesting. When I see this hero, anytime I'm in a very defined market category, I feel like you need to immediately say the differentiation, right? Like if you launch a new web browser, actually, Pep, if you can open another tab really quick, Arc Browser's website, they're immediately, it's not saying what the differentiation is, but they're answering the question, why are you better than Chrome, right? Like literally the headline, this is a Chrome replacement.
Yeah.
Right? And do they do a good job of explaining why they're better than Chrome? The jury's maybe a little out. But when I see the thing about time tracking, I'm like, okay, time tracking has been around for a really long time.
Right, like isn't the Time Doctor the category leader?
My old the agency I used to work for, they used I think it was called Harvest time tracking. So it's a very defined category. So I would want to know what's your unique angle on time tracking that is different. I'm not sure that this hero actually says what that is.
And if we talk about the multiple ICP conflict, I mean, I think it's in that sense, it's well done. Like you understand what it is. It's not like we're trying to be too many things to too many people. But yeah, the differentiation thing, because it is a mature category. And I think adjectives like flexible, mean very little, because like what's flexible, right? Spell it out. Like if the problem with every other time tracking tool is that you can't do very specific things, well, say that like, well, unlike those other guys, we can do this.
Because it feels like very boilerplate, right? Like if I was going to look at a CRM and it was like, manage your sales pipeline with the CRM, I'd be like, that's kind of what they all do, right?
Yeah. So this is the approach where it makes an assumption that you're the only tool in the world that does what you do. Like there's no reference to alternatives. So that could be improved. All right, page. Okay, so it's not about this website. So let me turn sharing off for a minute. Paige Heller is saying, my company is a small business bank or bank account. Oops, where did it go? is a small business bank account attempting to target customers by their industry. We've found that by personalizing our website with industries, it leads to confusion for users that did not see their industry listed. How would you recommend personalizing our website for our ICP, but not leaving out other small businesses that could find value from our product? So my main question is like, is Anthony's company using a bank really that much differently than my company? Like, I want to see the money and I want to send money and receive money, right? And maybe low fees and like ease of use. Like, I'm a big fan of Mercury.com, and they serve, it's one of the fastest growing neobanks or whatever they call it. It just says like, get a bank account in 10 minutes, right? It's the value prop on their homepage, which they contrast against you go to a bank and try to open a business bank account. Holy shit, I've done it in person. That's a painful process.
Not 10 minutes online.
Yeah. And so I would question, how different are these different customers by industry? Like, what other needs? They need to borrow money. They need to, yeah. So I guess without this information, I don't know if I can say anything useful.
And if you take like Salesforce, they basically sell the main software and then they add on industry specific like skins over them, like the finance cloud and like if it's something like that, I would just talk about the base level stuff on the homepage and then save those like additional features probably on other pages.
Yeah. All right. Second next question here. We have 15 unanswered questions. We probably have to answer some of them on social later. So Thea is asking, does it make sense to build two different brands and websites for two different ICPs that both would land in the same SaaS but would use two very different facets of it? Context: I'm building a data solution inside a specific industry, hotels. One facet of this data is used by hotels themselves and other by tech companies selling to hotels. Though there is an overlap. Point is, messaging is so much easier, but I do get the point that you mentioned about Stripe. It has me thinking now.
I have we've seen this a lot when we see people building software for e-commerce that is primarily being delivered via agency. So it's like e-commerce companies will hire agencies that will use the software to help the e-commerce company. So it's like on one hand, the company is buying the software, but the agency is really who's going to be like rolling it out and implementing it. And it usually, from our experience, it usually just makes sense to target one of them on the homepage and use, because a lot of times if there are two of those different sides, one of them will be better reached via marketing and the other one might be better reached through other channels. And if they're reached through other channels like outbound sales or word of mouth or referrals or stuff like that, you can direct them to a more specific subpage for them. Or if you're like, the bulk of our marketing is for the hotels, and so most people are going to land on the hotel, and that's who we're going to speak to. The middle ground is a company like Uber. If you go on their homepage, they effectively have 4 above the folds back to back, and it's just like a homepage hero for drivers, then one for riders, then one for drivers, then one for businesses, then one for I think Uber Eats. So you could also do it that way, and basically another version of like a prioritized directory where you're just trying to get them to their subpage based on who's most important.
Yeah. I think if you solve the same problems, it's just a different user.
Yeah.
Single website would make more sense, because also creating two brands is extremely hard. Think double SEO and double brand awareness. And if like double teams, maybe, like, it's just so much hassle. I think this is the lesser evil. It's like same website.
Yeah.
All right. Aaron is saying, we have several ICPs and are in the middle of a website rebuild. Tear us apart. qbscan.com. Okay. Sharing my screen here again. Window QBScan. Okay. It's a machine. Collect reliable master data in seconds. Improve your packaging.
Interesting.
Okay. I am guessing that this is not the only product you sell. Dimension, or is it? These things at the bottom seem to be completely unrelated. So there's this concept in websites called the false bottom. So if the website background or there are these strong lines like there, they indicate that this is like there's a logical end here, and then what follows is something else. So I think you have a lot of false bottoms here, even though you have like a software product, it looks like. And I'm not sure of the terminology. I'm clearly not the ICP here.
Yeah, these ones are always so tricky when they're so industry specific, where it's like, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know how much value you can add unless you're like in this. Like, I don't know if these are. Oh my gosh, I don't even know what master data is. Picking,
Mhm.
I don't know what picking means. QB scan, dimensional data. So like, I don't know if this is like, oh my gosh, this is the first product that's ever done this, or if this is table stakes. There's tons of products that do this, right? Like, very hard to know if this is differentiated without being the ICP.
Yeah. So I don't know who the buyer for this is, but if it's like e-commerce companies or retail companies, I mean, yeah, you want to do message testing with those people that can talk about the nuance there. Sorry, mate. Okay, last 2 minutes. Okay, let's do one more. Avinash is saying, look at this web, Blitz Llama. Build exceptional products consistently. AI-powered user insights platform. Okay, that's a category I should know a few things about. Like I read this and I still don't know what it is. Is this like Sprig and one of those continuous like survey your product users type of tools? Because it says product team, so I'm guessing it maybe is, but this is not clear messaging.
And I would say too, on this H1, right? Build exceptional products consistently. I see this all the time. Like when your product solves a portion of a much larger workflow, you can't claim to do the whole workflow, right? Like it's the same thing with PandaDoc. PandaDoc provides e-signature and maybe the contract management as part of a workflow, but you can't say that PandaDoc is closing deals, right? Like you're not. I don't think Blitz Llama is actually like, all right, I'm going into Blitz Llama and coding my app, and I'm going to build my product better in Blitz Llama. Like that seems like such a stretch from what is actually the product is probably doing.
Yeah. And here also you throw in the all-in-one without me knowing what are the all-in-one pieces.
Yeah. What have you combined?
Yeah. So in product service, gotcha. And AI analysis. Okay. And prototype tests. Okay. But yeah, the all-in-one is an unnecessary language here.
Yeah, and even if you just grab those three things and put them in the subheading, right? Like we help companies do in-app surveys, prototype testing, like even just bringing those up into the hero, people will be like, okay, at least I know what I'm looking at, right?
Yeah, and I think the all-in-one could be an interesting thing if these things that you combine, product surveys and analysis and prototype, if nobody did these things as a joint thing, which I don't know if it's true or not. Like, I don't know if Sprig does prototype tests, but like Maze comes to mind, but I don't know if Maze does surveys, and maybe it does. But in terms of them messaging to multiple ICPs, I mean, I don't see those problems here. He's trying to pitch the same thing, but maybe just not too effectively. All right, well, guys, unfortunately, we're out of time. We could like jam all day about this stuff here. So everybody, give Anthony a follow on LinkedIn if you haven't met him yet. Talks about this shit all the time, and occasionally me too. Yeah, if there's a question that you wanted us to get to but we didn't, DM me or Anthony on LinkedIn, and maybe we'll make a LinkedIn post about it or something, or just give you advice if we have any. All right, well, that's all, folks. Thank you, Anthony, so much for being here. If you need help with your home-based messaging, Anthony's the guy. And if you need to test it, Wynter. All right, see you later, guys.